was a lie. Hi! Greetings and salutations. I'm Ren. You are watching Make Believe. Specifically, you are watching the Season 2 premiere of Tales of Make Believe, a Twitch interview show for role players to share their stories, adventures, close the gaps between all of our loosely entwined communities, and to show folks new to the hobby or curious that TTRPGs and LARPs can be for everyone. We're gonna go around and say what kind of RPGs you play, about how long you've been playing, whether it's, LARP or tabletop or both, and if you have anything fun about yourselves that you just want to share right off the bat. So I'll go clockwise and go to Sharang.
My name is Sharang Viswas. I use he pronouns for myself. I'm a game designer, writer, and artist based in New York City, though I am foreign. And as a game designer, I try and play all kinds of games. So not just tabletop role-playing games or LARPs. I play all kinds of games if I can. I've designed in many spaces of games. And I started looking into game design in undergrad. I studied under Mary Flanagan, but I've been obviously playing games. No, I shouldn't say obviously, that doesn't mean. I have been playing games since I was a child, but I joined the, I would say, design community for role-playing games probably around 2016, which is the year I attended New World Magischola. Before that, I'd been doing more design on the board game space.
I met Sharang at PAX East this year. He was on a panel about something completely not related, but there was like a minute and a half where he was allowed to talk about romance in RPGs for just a moment, and that's when I kind of sat up in my seat, and I'm like, ooh, I want to know more about this.
Yeah, I've recently, do I mention this now, or do I not?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead, whatever.
Yeah, so I've been very interested in that for the last 2 years. 2-ish years ago, my co-editor Lucian Khan, who you might know from Visigoths versus Molgoths, for example, him and I applied for a grant from the Effing Foundation for Sex Positivity to curate and produce a book, Honey and Hot Wax, an anthology of erotic art games, which is now available on Pelgrane Press, so check that out. But so because of that, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've made a lot of smaller games that are to do with sexuality and romance and human relationships. I've been writing. I just wrote an essay on Eurogamer for their Pride special called "Towards More Speculative Sex: Why Sci-Fi Fucking Needs to Get Weirder and How Games Are Paving the Way." So I've been thinking about sex and games and things like that a lot recently. So, yeah.
So this is what I mean by getting people who know what they're talking about, because this is very exciting. So we'll go in clockwise. We'll go over to Michael. Michael and I have been playing since I started streaming almost 2 years ago. We were in my very first streamed game together, and I love Michael. So talk about yourself. What? Is this a surprise?
Yeah, right. Okay, hey, everybody. My name's Michael Bradley. I am using they, them pronouns. Which is relatively new, so I keep forgetting. I am a Twitch streamer, an RPG Twitch streamer, and a professional dungeon master, and game master, but it's mostly for that slightly problematic dungeon game that's happening still. The one with the dragons in it. You can check me out over on twitch.tv/JacquelineHare, where I am running a 5th edition pirate adventure of my own design called On Gilded Tides. You can also check me out where I am playing Vampire the Masquerade. The show is called Vampire at the Disco, and it's fantastic. It's been a lot of fun. And I am playing a Scion game there as well, run by the other amazing people on that channel. And you can check out my now slightly defunct podcast, mostly because of COVID, Dungeons, Dragons, and Dives, which is another 5th edition funny dungeon game where our party follows around fantasy Guy Fieri trying to find the mythical lost city of Flavor Town, in so many words. But yes, I played with Ren together a couple years ago in the first game I ever played that wasn't Dungeons and Dragons.
Tales from the Loop.
Tales from the Loop. That's what it's called.
And the new show is really good.
I haven't seen the show yet.
Pretty good.
Awesome. But yes, I've babbled, and I'm done.
I enjoy your babbling though. Yeah, so if you want to feel better about this is being your first time on stream using the pronouns, you were one of the first people I came out to during that first session 0 for Little Busters. So.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I was just like, can I maybe use they? Will you make fun of me if we use they?
That was the thing. Like, I got the vibe that you'd been doing it for years.
Fuck no.
Super comfy with
no.
it.
Apparently, I can fake confidence because holy shit, I was like sweating. Yeah. All right. So Adelaide.
Right. Yeah.
RPGs. How long you been playing them? Fun facts about yourself or funny facts, whichever. I don't know. I
mean,
can talk.
You know, I'm just it's pretty funny in my life in general. I'm Adelaide Garner. I am from Flavortown. I'm actually not from here. I just moved here. That's Ohio, Columbus, where Guy Fieri is from. I'm actually from Texas. Fuck Ohio. Yeah, I've been playing tabletops games for 10 years now, mostly since his 3. My voice is going crazy right now. I am deaf and hard of hearing. I am super bisexual. My gender is currently an enigma. I just say that my gender is Stepford wife because I'm very high femme, and that's what I identify with most. We're figuring it out. So I am part of a team called Action Fiction where we make role-playing games. We just now have our 5e parody, political commentary, American cultural fun game called Monsters of Merca. My game will be coming out hopefully in the fall. We'll see. Called Anomaly. That's horror science fiction. Super fun. I have a dog that I post about on Twitter a lot that does really goofy poses. And he is very fat and charming and perfect.
Chunky dog.
Yeah, Chunky Dog. I'm in multiple Twitch streams where I play games. I'm also in a podcast called Faeforge Academy. Go check that out. I play on Gold Hard Group's game, which is phenomenal. We played today. Super great. And that's it about me, I think. Maybe.
Awesome. I put a picture of the dog up for a moment because that was one of our questions.
10 out of 10.
That was one of our questions was if the panelists have pets, but people are going with that anyway. So, all right. Nuance. I mean, I think that means you have to include your friend in your ramble.
So I'll start with them because they may possibly be the most interesting things going on in my life right now. I have 2 cats. I have Captain and Isla. They're litter mates. They are very tiny for cats. I forget how big regular cats are because my cats are very small and tiny. Captain is so sleek and handsome. He's a little panther. He's never been fed or loved in his life, but we're working on that.
Oh no.
I mean, we've had him since he was 5 weeks old, but he will tell you, never been fed, never been loved.
Oh, no.
Isla is beautiful. She's like this muted tortie, but she's also a stereotypical mean girl and hurts my feelings on the regular. She loves my husband, fuck me, but he's great, so I'm not bitter at all. I'm the reason that we have them, but they love Sean Norn. That's fine.
Sorry, my mind went, are we still talking about a cat? What's happening?
My dog loves my boyfriend more than me now too, so
it's rude. It's just rude.
It's fine. I don't love you anymore.
I mean, not gonna lie, part of the reason my husband moved out, when we decided we're gonna change how our relationship works, is probably because he likes animals and I do not.
So I have been playing, I've been LARPing since 2005. I got into theater LARPing through Intercon, which is the interactive, oh God, I should have looked this one up. I've been there since 2005. I should know this, but interactiveliterature.org, there we go. It is their LARPing convention. It started off as theater style. Past few years, it's been opening it up to Boffer LARP. I then got into Buffer LARP in 2014, where a friend was like, do you want to come outside and run around and hit things with sticks? I'm like, none of that sounds fun. And then I came back after that weekend like, I need to do this again all of the time and forever. I've been playing tabletops since high school in 1990 or 1990 something. I know math, I'm pretty, okay? I got into D&D at second ed, advanced D&D, back when we had to learn Thaco, I finally figured it out after like a year or so of playing, and then they're like, "Hey, we're moving to third ed."
I mean, I used to play Planescape Torment and be like, yeah, I should have the highest armor ever, right? And then I'd be like, why am I dying all the time?
I have played a slew of games.
It's not your gear. It's because we were just bad. We were just bad at that game.
Most recently, I have been running a 5th ed Pokemon homebrew on my Twitch stream, which is Booksome Wench, as you can see from where I occasionally hang out in chat. I also sometimes stream video games on there, where I do a lot of crying over decisions I have to make and getting hopelessly lost and being bad at combat. Also, I'm part of this thing now with Ren. It's this podcast. I don't know if anybody's heard about it. It certainly might have been announced on another really cool Twitch stream, much like this one, just a couple weeks ago.
Why don't you tell us more?
I would love to. Thank you for asking.
I'll just sit back here. Apparently my job is done. I'm just gonna let you all talk. I'm just here.
I'm foreign.
I'm pretty. Now, Ren and I play in Fast Times in D&D, run by our dear friend Persephone, and also starring Caro Murphy and Elise. It is an every other week podcast where we play Dungeons and Dragons races, but in high school. It's very fun. Ren and I are both super awkward characters.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm completely socially competent.
How many times did you turn into a random animal in the first episode?
Look, turning into a tortoise is a stress response.
And how many times were you stressed?
Mood.
As many times a day as I have beast-shaped slots.
So that dropped today. Ren is probably better at explaining where you can find it, because they have been in charge of all of the things and been amazing and incredible, and I won't let you air quote it. Ha!
I exclamation point Fast Times in there. It's there.
Fair.
And I'm Ren. I'm here every week. You know who I am probably because you're at my channel. Hi. Yeah, so we're here to talk about something really near and dear to all of our hearts. Romance. In LARPing and in TTRPGs. And
Is that what I'm here for?
Yes.
No, you're here for me, darling.
I can't deal with this.
I gathered these 4 very specific individuals here today because of their various levels of expertise in this. Sharang obviously is just thinking about sex all the time, I'm assuming, right? Based on all of that.
I'm so horny living alone during COVID. It's ridiculous. I have started reading so much Archive Our Own, check the explicit tag. Not even funny.
AO3, AO3.
I mean, it won a Hugo Award last year, so it's super legit, okay?
Right. Why don't I ever add that I'm a Hugo Award-winning author? God damn it.
There you go. There you go. Also, I'm a professor of media, so I'll fight people who say fanfiction's bad. I'm like, fanfiction's a very legitimate form of engaging with your favorite artwork, so...
I'm sorry, if you've read Dante, then you've read Bible fanfiction, suck it.
Sorry, that was amazing.
Oh my god.
Dante is a terrible self-insert. That shit sucks.
Amazing. That was so funny. Okay, good. I will use that. I've stolen that nuance.
Nuance, before we were in Fast Times together, she's also in my D&D home game, and 2 games in, you slept with my character's brother.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
It was a threat.
Adelaide and I have been talking about this particular panel idea for a good long while, and I'm not going to get too into everyone's experiences, but I was there when Michael had one of their first in-character romances, and it was fucking amazing. So that's why you're here.
In-character romance, and it was my first ever gay romance too.
Everyone knows gay romances are cool romances.
I learned that. It was cool.
So that's why you're all here. And so we're gonna kick this off. Because there are 4 of you, nobody is required to answer every question. We'll just kind of popcorn in if you have a very strong opinion about a question. And yeah, so the first kind of little icebreakery kick this off question is, I just want to know what some of your favorite romance tropes are, like slow burn, mutual pining, you know, that stuff. So, whoever has strong feelings about this, go ahead and
Both of
chat.
those.
I
Both
know,
of
right?
those.
Nuance
So,
looks
my
really
head
excited. So, Nuance, say some words.
Oh, okay. So, to begin with, and I say this with as much love for myself as I can muster, I am romance trope trash. Like, K-dramas, fanfic, like, let's do this. Oh, they're roommates? You know, I'm here for it. I'm like, but are they going to have to share a bed? And every time it's a surprise, and every time it's amazing. But I am especially here for banter and wit, especially while fighting. Like, if in game or just reading, if somebody wants to banter, flirt with me while we're fighting each other, and then put their sword under my chin, I'm here for it. You got whatever you want. You want.
I'm
It's
hot
fine.
already. The sword under the chin. Oh my
Adelaide,
goodness.
you're very hot.
Also true. Like, but I'm here for the slow burn. I'm here for hurt comfort. I'm here for plot what plot. For me, it is like the tropes are great, but it always comes back to the characters. And so long as I can believe in the relationship between those characters, anything you want to throw at me, the most hackneyed, trite, ridiculous thing, I'm gonna be there with popcorn, like, are they going to kiss? They're going to kiss, and I'm here for it.
Other
So
strong
I
feelings?
have always been a fan of the Bildungsroman, right? Like, I'm always like teen shows, YA coming of age. I wrote an essay about this for Killscreen, right? Why adults are drawn to teenage stories. It's like 4,000 word behemoth essay. So like I'm always into that, and I have found that when I read fiction, the fiction I usually read is like sci-fi fantasy fiction. But I have found that during COVID, I need a lot of things to lift my mood. And so I've been using the New York Public Library's digital collections and borrowing a ton of gay YA, but like happy gay YA stories, because there are a lot of sad gay YA stories, right? Nothing wrong with them. They should exist. But I've been reading the happy ones.
Have you read Red, White, and Royal Blue
Oh
yet?
yeah, that was one of the first things people recommended to me. And I'm like, oh. I think the writing of the sex scenes in that book are very interesting and different. So we can talk about that later.
Yeah, I'm like, we should talk.
But I've been getting really into that sort of trope world, like the coming of age, self-discovery, often coming out, but not always. I've been really getting into that. Something I would say I want to see more, but I don't see, is I want to see more high quality. I'm gonna be snooty there, but high quality literary depictions of non-traditional monogamy, like non-monogamous, non-traditional relationship stuff. So I would say I want to like that trope once it becomes a trope. Yeah.
I know, right? There's so many examples of love triangles where it could just be like, you could just all do it.
Yes. Like my husband and I are always like, all these plots could be simplified if one of two things. One, someone wore a condom, or two, you embraced polyamory. Half of like straight romantic comedies would wither away.
I'm not going to object to this as a polyamorous person. Anyway, yes. Adelaide or Michael, do you have strong feelings about favorite romance tropes?
I'm also a slow burner, so I am unabashedly a very smutty romance novel reader. Looking for my partner to see if he reacted. He did not. He just said nope. Yeah, so she is not the best writer, but the ACOTAR series, A Court of Miss Imperia, all right, I had to sit through one entire novel and then 55 chapters of the second novel. But that chapter 55... Chapter 55 is like legendary. That's the first thing people will tell you about that series of books. That's all I'm saying. Chapter 55.
I love the patience you have, because when there are a lot of like teen TV shows which have like a minor gay plot line. Like I have no interest in watching that entire TV show. So bless those people who make the YouTube videos just compiling the gay scenes of a show in
That's
order.
it. That's all I want to see is like the lesbian smooching. Thank
right,
you.
exactly, right? That's what I do. I haven't watched 13
Hunters.
Reasons Why, but I know all the gay plot lines. because I've watched those on YouTube.
Shadowhunters with Magnus and
Yes,
whatever his
also,
name is.
I
The
could
other
not
guy
sit
who's not Magnus.
Yeah, I could not sit through that show because I didn't like it, but I'm like, but I will watch these two hotties because, yeah.
Also,
I'm in incredibly out of my depth here. I'm relatively fresh to all this, so
We're gonna send you our fanfic links after this podcast. Don't even worry
Michael,
about
we'll
it.
be
We got
gentle.
you.
We'll be gentle, baby. We
Just
got you.
play Honey and Hot Wax. Play the game I wrote. It involves giving a blowjob to the person you're playing with.
Good lord.
That's why Arzamandi was invented.
I guess. I mean, I'm definitely a slow burn. I'm definitely a pining. I'm definitely I like just like the. It has to be wholesome. It's gotta be soft. It's gotta be wholesome, because I'm starved. Not like in real life, but I just need more of it. I am gluttony. But I
That's
guess
a good
I like.
statement. I am gluttony.
Well, I've been accused of it before. That's not true.
What? Say, I
but,
know you.
Yeah, right. I like. I mean, I guess I like the teenage coming of age thing, considering that was the first one I explored. I see. The thing is, I've done I've done a few where I've been involved in them, but mostly from a DM perspective. Like we got the one from Little Busters, obviously, but I've got in the D&D game alone, we've got hetero marriage, we've got gay polycule, we've got like an asexual relationship thing that's happening right now. I just like, as long as it's wholesome, I like anything.
I'm afraid, actually, we have kind of skipped over a very important one, though. Monster fucking.
Oh my
I'm
god.
sorry.
Oh my god.
I talked about my essay about that.
Don't get me
so.
started.
I
I play.
I just realized my D&D game has that too. Oh no!
See? Bring
We'll
it
get
back.
into that in a little bit, but I have played a mermaid character. She can walk on land. But we ran into the creature of the Black Lagoon, which our DM was like kind of half expecting us to like potentially kill. No, we
You're
fell
like,
in love and now we
"Hey,
have children.
That's
so,
beautiful.
Yeah, we
Like,
got married happily ever after.
I'm married to Garrus Vicarian and Goliath from Gargoyles on the astral plane. You know how, like,
Oh,
remember
Garrus
that in the
every
90s?
time. But you also
Every
have to have
time.
Thane sometimes as like a palate cleanser. But then you
You
go
know-
right back to Garrus. So
Right,
that's it.
you know,
Do you know
I
the
get you.
Do you know the RPG, the solo RPG, The Beast?
No, but now I want to.
The Beast is a solo RPG. It comes with a deck of cards, and every day you draw a card at random, and you're telling over a month or two. You tell and journal a story of hooking up with the beast that lives under your bed, and you like define it. It like doesn't ever tell you what the beast is.
Naughty.
And I'm currently writing I'm working with Naomi Clark to write her new curriculum for her spring intro role-playing indie role-playing game class, and I'm like, Naomi, you need to assign this game, and she's like, Sharang, no, I can't force my students to play a game about sex, even though that is your research focus. It has to be an optional game. I'm like, fine, but you should make it an optional game. But it's really interesting. It's about like having sex with the monstrous, and I think there's a lot of like dealing with your own monstrous and stuff involved in that game. I haven't actually played it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Link that for us later.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
So
just gonna
for
add
a-
that to a list for reasons. Really high-minded ones.
So for two small little segues here, I will say for anyone watching who has not kind of figured this out yet, this particular episode has kind of a giant ass content warning in addition to the usual sort of like Ren swear counter, because everyone who watches me on the regular knows that I can't stop fucking swearing. But this episode very clearly has some content warnings for sexual content. That's just gonna happen. That's what's happening here. We're not gonna talk about graphics acts, but we are gonna be talking about sexual content and that sort of thing. So now that we've had that kind of like little icebreaker chat, and I am even more solidified in knowing positively that I picked the right group for this, because you all, I don't even need to be here, clearly. But I am here, so I'm gonna push the conversation along. At this point, we have
I need you to be here.
At this point, we have a number of questions from people in the Make Believe Discord community who would like all of your expertise and opinions on these things. So the first thing I'm going to ask is from Nick, who is one of my Discord server co-founders and one of our mods. Nick is also one of the first people that I did in-game LARP romance with in person. Love him. But Nick would like to know, and this is coupled with a question from Allie, which I'm going to ask both at the same time because they're kind of like the same conversation. So Nick would like to know, is romance generally something you plan for during character creation, or do you prefer to wing it? And then Allie asked, in a LARP, how would you indicate that you're open to having a romance storyline with your character? In a TTRPG, you could bring this up in session 0, but to my understanding, a LARP doesn't have one. Open-ended, blah. Take it away. and
I
yeah.
answer.
Yeah. So I love almost like mandatory have to have my character have a romance in the show. I think, or the game, whatever, private game show, whatever. I feel like it develops this plot in such a more complex way than you might just generally get from a completely non-romance game, which, I mean, of course, like, complex relationships form without romance, but for me, like, it just adds an added layer of complexity and almost challenge for myself as a player to really think about how they would react, like, in different scenarios, or how they would act on their feelings. I fucking love it. As far as planning, I definitely make it clear, like, hey, if you guys want to romance my characters and the vibe feels right, let's do it. Fucking love it. If nobody's down, fine. Total disappointment, but fine. It's really hard. It's such a cheap out way to say it, but like, vibe is really important, and it's you can't really define it, but you'll know it when you see it. And if you're not sure, ask. If you're not sure and you're not vibing with your party, always ask. That's the rule. As far as LARPing, I don't LARP, but I feel like for some reason I don't think I could LARP a romance. I feel like that crosses the boundary for me that I couldn't do. Maybe because it's me in person and they see me physically versus my character art that's visible on the screen. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
No, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get a mix of LARPers and TTRPG people, especially for this particular question, because I've done both. And there's definitely things about LARPing a romance
So
that
different in my head.
like, do you actually touch them? Like, what's the deal? So we'll get into that, but yeah, so.
I'm interested to hear the LARPers' thoughts on that, because for me, I don't think I could do it.
I mean, I feel that bleed is definitely a thing, right? So bleed is when emotions of the character and emotions of the player commingle, right? And I feel for me, in LARP, I need to have more of a chemistry with another human in order to roleplay a romance with them. While in a tabletop, I need less of that, right? It's easier for us to be like, yeah, let's play a romance. Great, we're gonna do it. But in a LARP, because the embodied nature of the LARP, right, where your physical presence and physicality add to everything, I think it is harder for me to do that with just anyone. I need to form chemistry. Now, of course, this becomes even more particular in, or maybe less particular in LARPs that are explicitly about this, right? So in 2017, I went to the American run of Just a Little Loving, which is a Danish LARP about queer people in New York at the start of the AIDS crisis, right? It's a 5-day long LARP. And as the LARP progresses, like every morning, we basically have class outside of the game where we learn more and more about the sociology, history, biology. We had experts come talk to us, and then we play a lot, right? And you die, and characters die and are literally buried in a coffin and things like that in the game. But the game is very much about sexuality and desire as one of its major themes. There are 3 major themes, one could argue. And you have, like, you represent sex, like you have pink dildos that you fillet. And if you put a condom on the dildo, that means you are having safe sex. And if you don't, it means you're not. So you have to find a condom, things like that. And so that creates an interesting thing. You can imagine, it's harder to do that because we're doing very even more explicit things in this game, right? But at the same time, you can also say, but this is a game that's entirely about that. So it's easier to let yourself go and enter that romantic / sexual.
And you're
sort
doing
of
it in a very
headspace.
thoughtful way.
Right. Also keeping in mind that you as a player know that certain acts could lead you to die very soon, while you as a character might not know that, right? And then the fact that you're explicitly saying this is a game about that may make it easier to enter romance and things, even with people you don't have that chemistry, the vibe that Adelaide was saying. Which I think is like what I'm saying about the system matters at a certain level, right? Like some degree, the system and the expectations you've set matter a lot.
That sounds like a really cool game concept. That sounds really intense, but a really cool,
It's
interesting game
it's
concept.
a very intense game. The location is secret. It's happened all over the world by now. I think last year was in France, and then before that was in London. Hopefully it'll come back to the US. It's very interesting, well-known. I wrote an essay. I write a lot of essays. I wrote an essay about it on First Person Scholar.
I've never had the fortunate. I've never had the experience of going to a LARP that was specifically designed to have in-game romance like that. I think I'm probably very similar to Nuance in that if we've had in-game romances, it's been at like you go to a campground and you're hitting each other with swords and maybe you fall in love.
Do you mind if I jump on after
Oh,
that?
yes, please. I was trying to segue. I'm
got you.
practicing my panel
That was
segue
nice.
here.
Panel food.
I just didn't want to jump in and be like, I have things to say. And then cut you
Please,
off.
I want you to please cut me off. I'm here to get cut off. You Ford.
I'm a big interrupter. Please interrupt me. Thank you.
So I have played in both. So I have played a lot of romance in theater style LARP and buffer LARP and TTRPGs and also forum RPGs. So I come with knowledge. So in most theater style, or at least in a lot of theater style, particularly non-Nordic ones, your romances are often written into your character. So you show up and you are told, okay, that is Jim, he is your boyfriend, that is Sarah, you and Sarah kind of have a flirtation, and part of your character, or part of your character arc, part of your job is to kind of figure out and navigate through how this is going to work. And that can be hard, because again, you are thrown together for 4 to 6 hours with people, and it's just like, all right, this is your husband, you've been married for 3 years, go. And you're like, oh, hi, by the way, my name's Nuance, I guess we're married now. But it can also, it can be a very powerful thing, because you and your RP partner both have kind of like a goal that you have to work towards, trying to figure out what that is. And it is a very interesting and fun way to unlock certain kinds of role play, because you're like, well, we're here, one of our character goals is to kind of get all the way over here. How do we navigate this together over the course of 4 hours? Then with the Boffer LARP, because they are more ongoing campaigns, it is a lot more freeform, and the way I have specifically let people know that I was interested in or approachable for romance and LARPs, a lot of campaign LARPs specifically will have post-event letters where you can just tell the GMs things like, by the way, I was really vibing with that NPC over there. So, if something were to happen, that would be fun. I would have a great deal of fun with that. Or I'm a flirt in real life and in pretty much every character. So I will flirt with people. And then usually the way it has come out, at least with me, is that at some point, one or the other of us will get to the point where we then approach it out of character, either a moment in game or after game, where we will email, and it's just like, hey, our characters seem to have a lot of chemistry. Is that something you are interested in exploring in game? And I find that is a very neutral way to bring it up, but also like, this is something I have noticed. Are we on the same page? Are you interested? Yes or no, and a lot of times, people can be like, I'm not playing that kind of character, or we'll see, but it does kind of depend on the interpersonal chemistry there. And bleed can be real, because the vast majority of my friends are incredibly witty and competent and fun and kind. So it's always just like, oh, you saved my life in the LARP and that was hot, but now you're rescuing kittens from trees and that's also hot. So like, oh no, I have a lot of RP crushes. So that can happen. If that's something you're uncomfortable with, you should navigate that. You should thread that a little careful. I just exist to crush on people. Like I have like 6 low-key crushes at any given time.
And I want to say 2 things to clear up misconceptions that the audience may have is that one, it is still absolutely possible to have organically emergent relationships in Nordic style LARPs, right? Especially in longer ones. Just and Loving is 5 days long. New World Magical is 3 days long. You know, so my most impactful romantic storyline in a LARP, it wasn't Just and Loving, and it emerged partway. The second thing I saw in the chat, someone talked about bleed, and someone's like, bleed is a bad thing in LARP. I will say bleed is just a thing in LARP. There is no good or bad judgment attached to it. In fact, a lot of people play in order to have bleed, right? Janaya Kemper writes very eloquently about emancipatory bleed. Her master's thesis is about that, where you play to feel feelings of empowerment and emancipation through the character, right? And so just putting that out there, bleed is not a bad thing. It's just a thing that you must manage depending on what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And this is something that has come up, but not in a whole lot of detail on this channel. And which is why our third panel this month, I have a psychiatrist on and somebody who wrote an entire giant long document about bleed at LARPs to talk about all the nuances with bleed and how, you know, there's positive bleed and bleed that can be, you know, damaging to you and that sort of thing. But bleed is just, you know, an effect of the you know form, of experiencing form, yeah. You know, these emotions, because it's hard to disconnect like what your body is experiencing between reality.
Yeah.
So definitely a thing we want to.
I have plenty to say about bleed in a little bit.
Yeah,
just sort of like the from a tabletop perspective as far as planning romance. I literally I have 2 scenarios, which is one as a player and then one as a GM. Is as a player. I had played so the character in question, Silas, who was my little Scandinavian boy in Little Busters.
Scandi boy.
Yes.
He's foreign.
Yes, he's foreign. It's whatever. Don't worry about it. Anyway, he was adorable, and he was very awkward through the first season of the show, and then we kind of restructured and shrunk the show quite a bit for the second season, and one of the new players who's fucking in the chat right now, bullshit, is basically came into the chat and like had watched the previous episodes and had decided I'm gonna try to romance my character, basically. So it was one of those things where it was brought up to me and I was like, fuck it, this should be kind of fun, and it turned into like a really sweet, kind of beautiful thing for me, which again, I mean, this is an example, I think, of positive bleed in my case, where it was kind of like not an awakening, but like a realization that a journey needs to be had, you know, that sort of thing, which led from A to Z, and now I'm, you know, still figuring things out. But it was an interesting step that way. And then as a GM, a lot of it is, you know, I am playing the NPCs, which usually it's like, okay, my character has a wife. Okay, I got to get ready to play the wife. Or my character has an ex-boyfriend. I'm like, I got to play that kind of angle, you know. Do they want to get back together? Do they want to not get back together? And honestly, I've had a lot more bleed with my NPCs than I had with my player characters, which is a little odd, but I'll kind of wait.
I wouldn't actually odd, right? We all form fictional attachments to fictional characters very easily, right? When you read a book, we're like, no, why did this character die? Like, a lot of people, I didn't finish the season, but a lot of people were really angry when Daenerys Targaryen, her thing changed, right? Because people had formed an attachment to that character. So it's very, I don't think that's weird at all that you formed this attachment to an NPC. Yeah,
I found it odd that I formed such an attachment to like my own fake people, but I guess somebody else's fake people are just as valid as my fake people. So,
or the other way around, your fake people are just as valid as somebody else's.
That's right. Yes. All fake people matter.
And I think bleed can become this like rich canvas for design as well, right? So I'm going to quote myself. I describe a LARPer as a reflexive transceiver of meaning, right? Where you are simultaneously creating narrative, consuming narrative, and watching yourself consume that narrative, right? Which is an interesting place to be. And what does that do to the meaning you glean from a game? And that's part of the mission of Honey and Hot Wax. So Honey and Hot Wax has a lot of things we wanted to do with it, but the two main thematic things were, one, we wanted to include games that are about sex and sexuality, that discuss sex and sexuality, but we wanted a significant chunk of the games in the anthology to be games that ask the players to literally perform sex acts on each other as part of the game mechanics, right? So when I say my game, The Echo of the Unsaid, asks you to give each other blowjobs, the game says give each other blowjobs. Obviously, the game also says there are safety tools and don't do things you don't want to do, obviously. But if you are following the game to the letter, that is what you're doing, right? Because part of the idea that we are interested in is, what does that do in terms of lead, right? What meaning? So games are about, Ian Bogost argues that the processes of a game are what gives the game meaning, right? And I mean, he doesn't argue it's the only thing, but that's one of the major things, right? The actions you are doing to play a game, the mechanics you're engaging with, give games meaning, right? So I was like, my co-editor Luch and I were talking about, what does it mean when you perform a sex act on someone as part of a game, not necessarily as a means to not necessarily because the game asks you to do it for another reason. Maybe it represents something else. In Lucian Khan's game in the book, you could be like jerking someone off in the game, but what you're doing is exploring the Forbidden Tower, right? Like you're exploring fantastical landscapes by touching each other's bodies. It becomes an idea about what meanings do we layer onto our own bodies and things. It's fascinating game. Especially if you
I
think
call
of it in
mine the
terms of
Forbidden
gender,
Tower
right?
too. That's cool.
There you go. But so that in that way, bleed becomes almost a game mechanic. Like the emotions that you are getting from performing this action with the person you're playing with, how does that inform and interact with the meaning the game is trying to give you and the narrative that you are constructing in your head? Yeah.
Hey, listen, you are probably the smartest person I have ever fucking met.
I'm not going to say anything. I blush, but my skin tone does not.
Ever.
Oh my god, are you foreign?
I'm foreign.
Oh my
So.
Yeah, so see, this is Adelaide, that's why I saw them talk for
Thank
45
you.
minutes and I was
Thank
like,
you.
I need, please, I'll pay you to talk for me, please. All right, so let's get a couple more of these questions out here. So this is another Nick question, and we touched on it a little bit, but when do you approach talking to fellow players about potential romance, i.e., how early into the crush? If, it's something that happens more organically.
I honestly, I'm sure this is probably a no-no, but I don't think I ever really, I don't think I've ever explicitly reached out to someone and been like, hey, like, do you like me? Do you like, I like you? I've never really, because I feel like in every group that I've been in, I've been very fortunate to have like very clear communication where it's not direct, but it's very obvious that and everybody can know because we joke about it out of character, so clearly there's something going on. Like I set up with my one of my Monday game, my little Ceto is like totally in love with our bad boy Bard. They finally just held hands the other day. It was fantastic. We've been playing for like nearly 2 years now. Yeah, adorable, love it.
That's the kind of burn I need.
But the way that I set it up was like, I believe they probably kind of flirted, or like she was like blushing or something. But we went into a bookstore and I bought a romance book about a wood elf and a tiefling.
Wait, sorry. In game you bought this book?
In game I bought this book. Like I secretly bought the book and she was like secretly reading it and hiding it from everybody. And eventually somebody found the book. And so in character, everybody knew. But it was, and it was just very subtle, and it didn't have to be like bullet point 1, I like your character. Bullet point 2, are we cool with this? You know, and it was very natural and organic and flowed with the course of our game. And I've been very fortunate that all of my games have been like that. But I mean, if you need to make it clear to people, because I'm autistic, so sometimes things aren't very clear to me. You know, if I'm not catching on, you can ask me. It's all good.
I think like with any other complex human relationship, it like depends, right? Like sometimes, like in Adlid's case, you have a connection and a chemistry and a friendship with someone enough that you can just roll with it. I would err on the side of, unless you know the person well, or like in Adlid's case, it's very, very clear, it is probably a better idea to pause and be like, hey, just checking in out of game. I feel this happening, it's interesting, right? I mean, one of the central tenets of LARP is your character may not know things your players do, right? And that can actually make the drama more intense and more interesting, right? But so I would say unless you have like someone you know really well, or you can easily unequivocally tell it's going this way, it's usually a good idea to check in. Like, hey, it seems like the narrative is taking us towards this romantic play.
Don't
like,
make it a secret. That's the
Right,
thing, I think.
right,
Don't
right.
make it a secret. If it comes up very clearly in game, cool. If it comes up very clearly out of character, even cooler.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
don't make it a secret,
I
because
would
like
say-
it's not a big surprise. It's not like a big huge reveal like, oh, they love me. Like it's not going to ruin the mood or the moment if
Yeah.
you
discuss
Check
it
in.
beforehand.
discuss
And
it
I think
beforehand.
if the characters are doing the relationship, you know, and one player has an idea for a pivot, that should be discussed, you know, like that you know, this is kind of a bleed moment for me, where it was like an NPC that I was playing, and the player had decided that he was interested in doing like a cheating plot.
You mean like cheating in a relationship?
Yeah, cheating on the NPC who was
Okay.
his the wife.
Uh-huh.
Obviously that's different from a player to player perspective, because like I'm the GM, the game is theirs, but I still felt that like, am I not good enough? Like I thought I was doing everything right. Like it's
Nocturne
it's hard.
rejected Cito once and I cried. Like I felt like I was getting like rejected. I
Yeah.
cried.
It was honestly, it was rough. It was like a rough like couple days, and then I got over it. Like that's the thing, is like it's fucking hard sometimes to get over it. When you're like I feel like this character's really cool, but yeah, the plot would be really interesting, but also they don't deserve this.
You
And I would say-
care, and it means you care about the game and your players.
Yes,
and you have an
exactly.
attachment, and it's meaningful.
And I do think there is a divide between LARP and tabletop, because, like, again, as you mentioned before, Adelaide, LARP is a lot more physicality. So I was actually just introduced to a really brilliant spreadsheet by a friend of mine, Dora, who she actually has this whole spreadsheet of like, what are you comfortable with in LARP, and it's just a bunch of actions like, you know, holding hands, kissing, and you fill it out and then you share it, and it's like just green, yellow, and red.
I was gonna ask that if y'all like had cause I don't have boundaries in tabletop. It's like, hey, like, do we fuck tonight? Yeah, we fuck.
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah.
and it fades to black kind of thing. But like, I'm curious, like, do y'all have boundaries?
That was brand new to me. I mean, there have been people that I have like held hands, I've kissed in game, things like that. But again, these are all people that I have known usually for years, because the LARP circle in Massachusetts is very big, but also very small. So these were things that like we had pre-negotiated together just as people. Like, I make out with you in parties. We can make out at a LARP. This is fine. But both that and even just like pining for somebody can make somebody out of character uncomfortable, especially at a LARP, because they, you know, they are there as a person and they are going to have to deal with these things. So I feel like definitely in LARP, out of character communication is key, because you don't want to trip over anybody's like triggers or even just discomfort points.
Right. Which is not to say that nothing, like, you like I when I played Beat Generation, I was playing Allen Ginsberg, right? and it's a day and a half long LARP in New York. And I ended up bathing naked in a clawfoot bathtub with another character, right? So and it wasn't even a sexual relationship. They were just like, let's bathe naked together, right? And we did. So as long as like Nuance is saying, it is a nuanced thing, right? Where things can happen, but you have to ask and just make sure everyone's comfortable. The last time I was playing, there was a changeling LARP held in a casino in Jersey City, so Atlantic City, where it seemed like I was developing the drone with the character. At one point, I'm like, out of game, I would like to kiss you, and I think my character would be very happy if you kissed him. And he's like, okay. And now we've been seeing each other for a few months, right? But so like you have like Nuance saying, when the physicality becomes involved, you need to be a bit more cautious and careful, because it might seem like, remember, people are playing characters, right? It might seem like they're into it because they're playing character, but they might not want to do certain physical. They might not even want to hold your hand, right? They might not like touching people. Who knows, right?
That's one of the safety mechanics we do have in a lot of the LARPs I play in. Is the base assumption is you don't touch people. Like if you have to touch somebody, you use a spell packet. Like I am healing you by touching the spell packet to a common place on your body. Certain games have like wristbands or something that you can then put on, and this wristband shows I'm okay with basic physical contact. You can.
I was
shake
literally
hands.
just about to ask this of you guys. I was just about to ask. Thank you.
Yeah. So
the sash thing. That's what I see. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then in certain theater style LARPs, they have this entire. It's called Arzamandi, where it is touching each other, holding hands. The first time somebody showed me Arzamandi, I blushed. And I mean, it was maybe 2 years ago, so I wasn't some, thin maiden fresh from college who's like, what is this world? No, it was like, 36 and married for a million years.
Do you want to quickly explain what Arzamandi is for the audience?
Yeah. So Arzamandi is it is a series of hand motions and touching that you can do to simulate physical intimacy. So, there are slow, simple touches like in the palm of your hand, the inside of your wrist, which are super sensitive, I have found for myself. You can kind of you can go rougher with grabbing, you can kind of grab someone's shoulder, and it is just a very, very immersive way to show the physical intimacy that your characters are having, even though you're standing like a foot and a half away, and you're just holding hands and occasionally other parts of the arm.
That's hot.
Yeah, it's like
hot.
a generic mechanic that many LARPs use. Of course, many LARPs have their own thing, like Just Little Love had pink dildos, right? But many LARPs it's a famous technique used to simulate romance, sexuality, and sensuality between characters. And it uses the principle of that these touches, like the wrist and hand, do affect you physically. So not in the same way as a sexual touch, but in
speak for yourself.
Related, maybe in the same way, but in a related way to immerse you, like Nuance said, to immerse
awesome.
you more.
Yes, because we have kind of, I believe part of it is because we are socialized to just think of hands as both being very intimate with hand holding, but also very basic with hand shaking. It kind of braids the two together in a very interesting way. And like I said, I was beat red in the middle of Monster Cam as being demonstrated with this, and just being like, I need to take a drink of water. Oh my goodness.
So this isn't a LARP. This is
it's a technique. It's a game mechanic that's just like X card is
cool.
a technique. It's it's like that.
So this is actually interesting because it reminds me of I have acting training. That was sort of what I went to school for, and I won't take forever on this because I know we've got a shitload of other stuff to get to. But there are a bunch of acting techniques, like viewpoints work, something called Alba, that do kind of emphasize the sensation of touch. It's almost like mirroring exercises as well. Sense of the space around you, awareness of what they call circles of attention. You have a small one, which is literally like a few centimeters around your skin, where that's kind of what you focus on. You focus on the touch there, medium, and then large if you're addressing God knows how many people. It's just interesting that these do kind of, you know, synergize. It makes a lot of sense because in acting exercises and stuff, touch is a very important thing. Not that you can't act without touching or whatever, but it's just interesting that there's some crossover there that I didn't expect.
And I also want to say, because I think Nuance and I talked about a lot about like the importance of asking. That also, however, is very culturally associated, right? In Scandinavia, the touching culture is more permissive, right? Like people just touch each other more in ways that are different. So in Scandinavian LARPs, if you go to play one of the famous blockbuster LARPs in Scandinavia, people will assume more things are okay. So like if you the example that people have given me is like, oh, we're an American freeform LARP, let's negotiate boundaries. Okay, please don't like kiss me or whatever. If you go to Scandinavian LARP, people be like, so choking is okay, but don't do it for too long. And if you spit, please don't spit on my face, spit somewhere else on my body. And slaps, don't just do it too hard. But you know, so like the culture of what is expected in touch can be ethnically or geographically, all kinds of different. So where this isn't a universal. This is like clearly like American informed, since all of us game in a largely American context, even though one of us is foreign. So just keep that in mind.
Wait, which one?
We'll have to find out, won't we?
Me.
But so obviously we're advocating for like consent and things, but also keep in mind that the norms of what you need to ask for consent could be different based on geography. So
Yeah, I know this is not my place to talk, but gosh, I'm a talker and I've been having such a hard time not talking. So I will say,
So sorry.
No,
no. One of my, I've had two great LARP romances. One of them was very simple. I asked the guy for consent to have an unrequited romance, just to have my character like pine over his and have nothing ever come of it. And you know what that guy did? He fucking stabbed me in the heart. His character died after like a year of my character pining for him, and he left me a note that said, "I've always loved you, but I could never tell you." And so
And then he's dead.
and he's dead.
That's great. That's great, but also fuck that guy.
Oh my god.
Oh my god! I would never be able to stop crying.
I
have to
cried.
go back and reread that letter
I'm
like
about to
every few
cry
years.
now.
So that level of like just getting a level of consent to just like unrequitedly crush on someone was pretty important in that community, because it was a very like no touchy, no contact sort of thing.
and that brings the whole thing of play to lose, right? That is not as big a concept in like trad or OSR kind of games, but in indie storytelling and LARPs, like play to lose is a big thing, where you'll be playing a game and like if you play Bluebeard Bride, for example, the ending of the game right before the game. The GM will read out to you the story of Bluebeard Bride, and you're gonna fail, but you take pleasure in that journey. So what Ren was saying, they knew that their character was gonna have this terrible thing happen in a way, maybe not the exact details, but in a way, and that can be powerful and dramatic.
That's cool. I'd never heard the term before, the phrase "play to lose," but that's actually kind of something that I am doing right now in our vampire game, because
Vampire is a great game for that, because the
Yeah.
story of the vampire is of tragedy, right? You are
Right.
monsters that are tragic figures, right?
And I know it's one of those games that's obviously potentially very triggering. It can get very, very close to a lot of lines really, really quick. So I set out to play an absolute bastard, just a character that I would have no connection to, so that I wouldn't feel bad when he gets what's coming to him, that kind of thing. And it's been fun because I've just been able to be a complete prick,
Right.
and just know that everybody else knows that I don't like. I want him to have his comeuppance, and I'm excited for it.
V5 or Vampire in general is an interesting case, because at some level its mechanics are at odds with its representation, because it's trying to represent these tragic figures, but you're also like gaining power and gaining levels and becoming more powerful, so they're a bit at odds. While if you take a game like Urban Shadows or Undying, which are more about your characters are gonna go corrupt and burn, or your character is going to give in to their bloodlust ultimately. Use vampires as the more traditional sense of like they're not heroic, they're not going to be glorified, they're going to be tragic. And so when you play those games, like when you play Urban Shadows, which is very well known, I would say, in the indie world, you know you're either going to die or get corrupt and retire. There's no like happy ending. And so that's a play to the new game. Grant Howitt from Rowan Rook and Deckard did Heart, right, which is the sequel to Spire, where as your character gains levels, it's a dungeon crawl game, you get closer to your Zenith ability, which is your most powerful ability, and every single character class's Zenith ability kills them. It kills them, right? I'm actually pitching a lecture about this to a conference about like what does this mean in terms of what is a power fantasy game? What does it mean in terms of upending colonial tropes of these power fantasies? But like playing to lose is definitely a thing, and in romance it can be really interesting because all of us like people often ask me why did you go play Just as Loving? That sounds really depressing and sad. And I'm like, well, you're my age. I'm sure you watched Titanic and liked it. It's a very sad movie, right? Have you never watched a sad movie and enjoyed it, right? So playing a drama, playing tragedy, playing bad things happening to you can be very cool, and for a lot of people can be very cathartic as well.
Gosh, I have a story which, you know, I'll tell in the Discord later. This will be bonus content. I'll tell the story. I'll tell the story about like the 2+ year slow burn. We finally held hands and confessed our love, and then my character got amnesia. Thing I did to Nick. Sorry, Nick. Love you. I'll tell that in the Discord later.
Ren, for Fast Times, spoiler. Spoiler. That's all I have to say on that subject.
All right.
We're very excited about it. Sorry, it just came out this morning, so you know.
Funny enough, I'm thinking the idea of playing that kind of grand tragedy is like super like romantic as a concept, which is part of the reason, back to that sort of NPC I was talking about earlier, that I kind of felt the bleed with that cheating subplot, because the character is destined to die. That's supposed to be the end of like their arc is sort of like, you know, 7 years from now, a horrible tragedy will happen, but until then, it's the best years of their lives. And then when it's like the idea to pivot came, I'm like, wait, the tragedy isn't yet. We're 7 years too early for this. But like that's like I got very invested in like the grand Victorian tragedy of it all, which I still love. I love that stuff so much.
So basically what we're kind of discovering here is that we could sit here and talk for 3 hours just about how to initiate in-game romance, but we don't have 3 hours. So
we've had thousands of years of literature about romance, right? And like games are just another art form, right? In fact, Mary Flanagan argues it's the oldest art form.
So you're saying we go for 1,000 hours, right?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
one for each year.
Order some coffee. Let's go.
One for each year. So audience, that means up your donations. We need all this coffee.
So I do want to make sure that we hit a couple of other sort of like informative types of questions, just because I know there's so many people that
gotta teach the children,
want to know things. One question I got, which I definitely have had some run-ins with and think is pretty fucking critical, is jealousy, but not in the way that you're gonna think. This is about how do you communicate with the people you're actually sleeping with in your real life, or not sleeping with as the case may be, but your romantic partners in your real life, communicating with them about boundaries, especially in LARPs, with your in-game relationships with people that you're not actually in a relationship with. So the question is, technically, is from Nick again, is how much communication do you generally feel like you have to have between your in-game partners and your IRL partners? And if, you know, if there's ever been situations where there's been a lot of jealousy because you're getting all committed to this fictional relationship and, you know, that sort of thing.
So my Tuesday game, I'm in a relationship with a guy. His player's wife is also playing with us, and she is in a relationship. Her character is also in a relationship with another character. and they're texting me right now because they're watching the show. And it's very fascinating though, because when they joined the game, they were newcomers into our game, and his character and my character are both Azamar, and so we immediately bonded, and it just kind of developed from there. But I was like, oh my god, like the stereotype of like the girl versus girl kind of thing. I don't have that kind of vibe, but like I've run into people like that before, so I was very intimidated. Like, is it gonna be cool? Like, because I don't have interest in her husband. I have interest in her. She's super hot. I love you, Sarah. I love you, Sarah. She's super hot. Yeah, and she's like, it's like when you messaged me about hooking up with Aaron's character, and it was very natural, and I wonder how they dealt with it. I'm curious. But as far as like Jaren, I'm very privileged and blessed to have like a partner that is just like, okay, whatever, because I talk about like, oh, my boyfriend in my game tonight, and it's totally normal and it's totally fine. Have you ever gotten jealous about me talking about my character boyfriends? No, why would I? That's what he says. I love you. Yeah, but I just, it's a very, especially my Tuesday game, it was a very complicated situation that just worked out really smoothly. And I don't know if things would have been different, like had her character not been involved, or like the reverse, if I had been involved with her and not him. I don't, like, who knows? But yeah, that's a really interesting question.
It's like there's no easy answer, right? That's the lesson, right? That everyone has a different boundary. Everyone, like I roomed with someone at a LARP once, and he had to ask his wife if it was okay rooming with me in the same bedroom, for example, right? Because they had different like boundary negotiation stuff, right? And I think that's the hard answer is talk to your folks.
If it's something that you would feel nervous about telling your partner, it's probably not the wisest idea.
To do without talking to them.
Right.
I'm one of those, like, I also agree. Talk, please. Just, I feel like so many issues in relationships and things can be solved by so much more communication than I think we're generally raised to expect or to have.
But then where would all the rom-coms come
from? I mean...
There's a lot of drama in poly relationships.
But you don't understand. Let me explain. And I throw my cell phone in one direction and run in the other.
No!
It was just my sister.
But so, my husband is the one who actually got me into LARPing, then boyfriend. He was like, come to this convention with me, and then like sent me off, walked me to my first LARP like a kindergartner. I was like, all right, have fun. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then like offering later, I was like, I'm into this, let's do it. But we first started our polyamorous negotiations to be like, sometimes when playing romances and LARPs with the people we know and people we're friends with, I would like to kiss them. And sometimes at parties, is this cool? So that was actually how we started our whole polyamorous thing. The first time that Sean's girlfriend met him, they were romance partners, and she was like, okay, I like him. And then she saw us, and then I hooked them up together several years later. So LARP, opening poly doors since I don't know when. But now because I also play on a forum RP where it's like live journal, except we've moved to Dreamwith now. I have sat in bed next to Sean writing out shared smut scenes with my RP partners there, and just be like, and sometimes I'll be like, Sean, I need to see, is this thing I'm trying to do actually physically possible for some like a normal human thing? Let's lay there, I need you to do this. So, but again, all of this happens because my husband trusts me and I trust him, and we've negotiated boundaries and we've talked about it. So I don't think it has ever come up, and he's busy running a D&D game, so I can't even just like lean over and yell. But the major thing is just always talk and make sure that, I think like Adelaide said, like if this is something that you would be uncomfortable seeing in real life, don't somehow assume that it's okay because it's just pretend, because everybody has different boundaries. That's all I have to say.
All right. If you don't have anything to particularly add on to this, Michael, we can scooch.
No, I mean, I have actually I have more comments on kind of your story because it sounds familiar a little bit. In that kind of again, it all relates back to the one player kind of relationship that I've had before, where it would be a thing of like, messaging to figure out what happens in the between times, and of course, that would lead to X, Y, and Z, and it's not that the concept of it made me uncomfortable, because I did it and wanted to, but it was like it made I was nervous to speak about it with my partner, and thankfully they were like, okay, sure, fine, because they like read and write fanfic, have for years, and I have been closer knit to that community or whatever, but it's the suburban brain that I was given growing up that like made me freak out about it, where it's like, yeah, talk to people, because then it'll save a lot of anxiety later, is basically the moral of that. Where it's like, if I had just discussed it in the beginning, I wouldn't have like internalized it when there was really nothing to worry about. That's
and of course, you could read the situation that you talk to someone and they don't agree with you at all. But I think that is out of the scope of this panel of how do you then renegotiate your boundaries and discuss that.
Exactly.
But that might happen, and you're gonna have to talk more.
Basically, I'm baby and I don't know how to handle things myself.
I had an interesting question from Brandon, which is, do you think it's important to include like relationship rough patches in your in-game romance? If so, do you have some do's and don'ts for how to do that? Because I could see that getting real hairy.
Plan it first. It's fine to do if you plan it first. If you discuss, because hey, again, same romance. The characters had a hell of a rough patch. It was planned and discussed, so we kind of knew the steps that it was gonna follow. We didn't script it, but it was like, this person is gonna do X in like over here, so this person's gonna react accordingly. Like it was mutually consensual for the sake of the story.
It got bad too. I was a little worried about whether or not you had, because there was like cheating and drugs and stuff, and I was like, are they gonna fight in real life? I'm sad for them.
It did get like intense. That is not necessarily the way that I typically would skew things, because I desperately need wholesome, but I was holding on for they make up and everything is, and they're stronger for it, that sort of thing. But that was planned as well, like the rough patch, and then it's like when you break a bone, it grows back stronger, is what I hope is going to happen in stuff like that.
But also there's the play to fail too,
Play to fail, yeah.
We're doing so again in my Tuesday game, same game that I'm dating the half of the couple. Her character and the character that she's dating, just in our last session, is it Wednesday? Last night, something terrible happened, and they are now kind of not necessarily at war with each other, but they're in our chat right now talking about like how their feelings might be, like how their characters might react to each other. And it's totally fine to plan these things out before you actually role play them out. You can go into this with your little bucket list of things that you need to get done in a role play conversation in game, and it doesn't ruin the moment, it doesn't ruin the story, it doesn't ruin anything. In fact, it probably enhances it, I think. But yeah, no, I don't think you necessarily need to have bad things happen for your plot to develop. I think it adds complexity, which is really cool, but like, I love happy endings. Give me happy endings all day long.
And I'm gonna ad nauseum repeat the refrain, it depends what you want, right? Because if you're playing, let's say you're playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and you're playing it because you want to do heroic fighting monsters and good versus evil, triumphant power fantasy, right? And you're adding some romance stuff. You might not want to deal with, let's look at relationship stuff. And I would argue that D&D rule set is not designed to deal with that. And if you want to include that all comes from you, right? That doesn't come from the mechanics of the game. So planning is important, because the question was, how important is it? It's important as you want it to be, right? Are you interested in exploring that? Then it is. are you interested in exploring that in this particular game? I might argue, well, maybe you should try doing another game system that does that, right? Maybe you want to play Monster Hearts, which uses character social pressure as an actual mechanic, like the strings, like I have pressure, I can pressure you about these things. Or play like Good Society, which is all about scandal and like love. Or you might want to play My Girl Sparrow, right, by Charles Pedersen, or Emily Caraboss's Romance Trilogy. All of the games are about what happens when we cross boundaries in our relation. All the games in the Romance Trilogy are sort of about that, right? And so one thing is, you think what you want. Do you want to include this? It's totally fine not to. Like Adelaide said, if all you want is a happy ending thing for your romance, great. Just like I was saying before, I want to read a lot of gay, fluffy romances right now. So I don't want to deal with like homophobia in my fiction and stuff at this moment, right? I can when I'm not in COVID, but not when I'm in COVID, right? So similarly, so that's first point, see what you want. And two, also see if the game you are playing facilitates and supports what you want to do. Not to say that you can't do it, you can, but certain games are going to be better at supporting,
especially if you're
that.
using it as some kind of like side therapy for yourself or your like in real life problems. Which really, honestly, I don't necessarily have a problem with that idea in a game. Like I address like the darkness inside myself in my tabletop games, even in D&D, where it does not facilitate that at all.
Yep.
But there are way other better games, even just solo player games that like will definitely bring out the darkness inside of you. If that's what you want to address.
Yeah. I've got like a very short thing to add on, because I know Nuance, you were gonna say something as well, but just brought on by what you were saying, Sharang, was the like you also have to know what you as a player care to explore is the thing. Everybody wants to do everything. Everybody wants to be hip and cool and play everything. It took me a long time to realize Monster Hearts stresses me the fuck out, and I will never play it. It is just not for me. But you have to realize when the game is just not for you. It's not your kind of thing. Like there are moments for.
I don't like zucchini. It's not for
there. You go. Yeah. You don't want to be cool and force yourself to eat a zucchini. Like, don't worry about it. Play the next game. That's good lord. But yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say that because you reminded me by mentioning Monster.
No, that's a very because you'll hear me. You'll hear me say a lot. Play different kinds of games, and yeah, I like I said, I'm a game designer, so I play lots and lots of games to see what's happening in them. But very often I'm like, I didn't like that. I don't want to play it again. But so feel free to feel that.
So I have I like romances where you have to work for your happy ending, but that doesn't necessarily mean interpersonal romance or interpersonal strife. Like in one of the campaigns I LARP for, I play a high fae princess who is in love with a mortal human librarian. And he's played by an NPC, so like in this time, like he's been kidnapped, and the whole town had to go save him, and because we have the summer off, because the camps we used to LARP at are then become summer camps for kids in the summer. He was kidnapped at the end event of the last spring event, and then I spent all summer stressing over this, and then we had to go rescue him in the fall event, and that that really brought up issues, because then we also had to deal with how he felt afterwards. And then even now that we're better, we have to face the fact that he's got a mortal lifespan and I will not. So just for I love bringing in different kinds of like narrative and drama. I like my romances to really have to work and just earn that happy ending, but I also really like it when we do that, but we splash happy moments in there to kind of keep you going.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people kind of consider, well, if we're going to have strife in a relationship, it has to come from internally, and it really doesn't. Like, there are so many things that can go wrong and that will really test you and your relationship with your partners. That doesn't have to be the two of you having internal conflict. Like, other things can drive that conflict, and that's very important. I do agree, though, if you're going to have character like when you're on the same level of game, talking out, I really do want to do this pivot is important. One thing that is fun and also terrifying about when you're LARPing, having a relationship with an NPC is the fact that you don't know. Because I had no idea that we were going to have a lovely dinner together and then he was going to get kidnapped by a giant bunny person. So like that uncertainty that at the same time isn't exactly their fault also I feel brings an element of excitement because you don't know what's going to happen. But I can't go and be mad at him for getting kidnapped and tortured. So it's just
it's the world tearing you two apart, not the two of you tearing you two apart.
And that brings a really interesting point. I was in a game recently where at the start, the GM said, in this game, we're not going to take into account, we're not going to include racism and homophobia. And I'm like, okay, great. But then some of the players were talking about it and they're like, yeah, we don't need that in our games. And I was like, I want to say I disagree, but I will not. Because we might not need that in our games. Some people might need that in their games, right? Some people might. So I hear this bandied a lot, like games shouldn't have racism and homophobia. But like some people want that. Right? Again, ad nauseum, right? If you're playing Bluebeard's Bride, you are playing a game about misogyny. You are not going to escape misogyny. If you're playing Rosenstrasse, you're playing a game about anti-Semitism. You cannot escape that. It's a game about Nazi occupation, right? So I want to empower people to also be like, I am interested in exploring this very serious theme in my game, but that is you are interested in that, you are completely entitled to be interested in that. Just make sure that the GM, or if you don't have a GM, whatever, whoever is at your table is also interested in that, because that's when you can have issues like you really want a game which has a lot of homophobia at you so that you can resist against it, and someone else is like, no, I've lived through that too much, I just don't want to discuss that, right? So it is okay for you to want to have real issues like that in your games, but it's also okay for other people to say, I do not see that.
Right. Nothing's off limits inherently at the table until they're made off limits.
That's
I don't like that.
Someone,
I don't like that either. Where like there's like just these blanket rules applied to tabletop, because like I've had characters that have had horrific trauma done to them, the same trauma that has been done to me in real life, and I like being able to fight against those demons that I've never been able to combat in real life. Like I like killing the bandits that try to attack my character. You know,
that's what the RPG consent forms are for.
Yeah.
Like that's we filled that out for our VTM game, and that is how we realized, you know, like based on some of the hard no's that were happening that you cannot avoid in a game of vampire, like suggestion,
blood sucking,
blood. Suggestion and like manipulation, gaslighting is like a big vampire tactic. It was determined that, like, you know, one of the people who's in our normal player base, it's not the game for them. So,
and that's okay.
That's fine. There's always another game to play.
Can I share a real quick story about kind of using LARP as it's actually, you know what, it's off topic, never mind. I'll have to come back.
I want to hear the story, David.
I'm not going to let anyone else talk until you tell the story.
I want a LARP story.
So as people, some people know, I am disabled. This is actually very recent. It's related to that whole bone thing, which is why I like cried a little bit. Mine don't heal. It's not your fault, darling. You didn't know. It's cool. We're cool. I min-maxed Constitution for Charisma and then didn't realize that you need to have a minimum Constitution score for your bones to heal. I thought that was just part of the thing. But so I've had several surgeries on my foot, and then they did not heal, which meant I can't use my right foot. That's real awkward, but I still LARP with that. I LARP in a chair, and now I have a scooter and everything. But when this was all happening in real time, I had so much emotion about it. I still do. And unfortunately, it's not a thing that I can fight because it's something that my own body is doing. It's not a screwed up surgery. It's just my body doesn't function correctly. So I filled an appeal to my GMs and I was like, look, this is something that I'm seriously dealing with, but I have no outlet for it because I'm slowly like losing mobility, losing my life. It's becoming more and more restricted, but there's nothing I can do. It is fate and happenstance. can we have something in game where there's a reason for this to have happened to my character that I can also fight? And so they wrote me this whole module about, or this whole background about what happened. So I was rescuing people and I got caught in a trap, and there was elf stone in there, and so the elf stone is embedded in my foot, and we just can't remove it. And that trap was triggered by somebody, and then I was able to go and confront this person, and it was so gratifying and freeing and emotional. I might cry, sorry everybody, because it gave me the opportunity to just be angry at something, and it was a real big deal, and it still is. And that is, I think that's the reason why, you can say nothing is off the table in a game so long as everybody else consents to it, because
it's important sometimes.
You need to be able to have that.
Yeah, nuances. Anecdote brings a lot of nuance to this idea of,
Wow.
of these universal truths we bandy around a lot, right? Like, people often say, never depict disability stories where the disability is magically healed, right? Maybe that's a good rule of thumb, but for some people who have disabilities, they might want that, right? Or I was on a panel once, I didn't speak up then because it was out of topic. One person's like, a rule, never dead name a character. Like, if there's a trans, never dead name them. That is not true for everyone, right? I have spoken to trans game designers who are like, that's a part of my life. Like, I had another name before. I'm not going to abandon that name. I'm proud that I changed it. Like, So things like that we think of as general rules, you shouldn't be shocked when someone is like, actually, I don't do that. Don't be like, no, but one must never do that. It's a social agreement that one must never do.
Yeah,
right?
it's a discussion that needs to be had. I mean, based on what you just said about healing disability magically, check out on Twitter. This is a plug for somebody who isn't here, and I don't know in real life, but I just like their content. Mustang's Art on Twitter. They write for The Witcher TTRPG, and they're fantastic. They've developed a combat prosthesis for D&D, and a combat wheelchair.
Yeah,
a combat wheelchair.
I saw that.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
It's amazing. My next character is gonna have that.
Ren, in Wrath, I have a Ring of Featherfall, because when Sephi and I were talking about what are things I'm like, don't let me lose my mobility in this game. That's why she's a dancer, because I can't anymore. So that's one of those things that I build in with I'm dealing with this in my life. My characters are all now they're just gonna run around up and down, because you know what? I would take that magic whatever if that would do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that I do not respect the actual stance itself, but just again,
it's a personal thing.
Yeah, and it depends on where everybody is in their journey.
That's something I actually, to personalize it as well, that's something I realized as well is a potential trigger for myself in games, especially when we're talking about our Scion game, because there's a lot of godfuckery that happens.
Like
God
literal?
fucking and God, well, both,
Well,
but
I mean,
that
I just released a game about fucking gods, so
I might need to read it, honestly. My players are zealous. But I've realized that a personal sort of trigger or thing that I'm kind of coming up against is the idea of polymorph or transformation, because I think I'm dealing with a lot of personal gender stuff right now, and it squicks me out. Not that I have an issue with it when it's it's this kind of non-con transformation aspect that a lot of Greek gods will do. I read the myth of Io, and it fucked me up for a week.
I think every mythology has gods that change gender.
That's the thing. It's that, I don't know why, but the whole gender bending kind of aspect of it freaks me out personally. I don't care for anybody else, but my Scion is a Scion of the Greek pantheon, and she could change her gender, change her form, do whatever the fuck she wants whenever. Personally, I'm never gonna do that until I feel more comfortable with it. But it's it reminded me of the mobility thing, where it's there are some things that just kind of squick me out. I'm realizing, and that's
A lot of people address that kind of stuff in games, so you're not alone. A lot of people like come to terms with their gender identity or lack thereof, like sexuality, all of it via tabletop. Like
I can
totally-
blame
totally all in-
every gender and sexuality decision.
I mean,
that I've
that's
had
because
based on tabletop.
humans, we understand the world through stories, right? Our entire understanding of the world is through stories. That's why The Sandman has a lot of truths in it, the graphic novel series, I mean, right? Like, the stories define our world. We're talking about fake news. All that is about stories and what we believe and what we don't believe. And we are very off topic right now.
That's okay. So you know what, I've got 3 of our questions highlighted that I think are what I'm just gonna call kind of like popcorn questions, because I don't think they require every single person to answer them. I think they could be kind of like knocked out really quickly. So we'll do those, and then we'll hit bigger question, and then we'll be done. So question number 1 from Paul: do you only ever romance NPCs or fellow players, or a mix, or is there a big difference between the both?
both is good. Both is good.
Yeah.
I would say, both. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so romancing NPCs is great because in some ways you can really script how you want the story to go, just due to conversations between you and your GM. However, you're also then limited in how much time you can spend with them, because either one GM is playing multiple NPCs, or this person is out playing this NPC, but then in like 20 minutes you've got to go and play 3 other NPCs. Whereas with players, you have all of that time, but it can, it's a lot easier for issues and problems and things to crop up. So the way I do it is, whoever my character has charisma with, I will, if it works out, then I will potentially see, like, are we gonna explore this, yes or no? And then we just go from there. But it really does come down to, like, who hits my, who holds the sword under my chin first, third, or however.
I love this image of sword under my chin. Anyway,
It's so hot.
It's so hot.
It's so hot.
I'm the one with the sword.
Sometimes I'm both.
I have my own sword under my chin because I'm missing extra ribs. Anyway.
All right, next popcorn question. This is from Ben, who is one of my GMs in a Star Wars game I play. And this is a question that is more towards people that have GM'd in-game romance. So maybe this is a good Michael question. Since in-game romance can often be a player-driven plot, how do you balance letting the players do their thing with what's going on with the rest of all the character drives and the limited time that you have at the table?
The players that I run for, romance is their character drive. So that's nice and easy sometimes. But the way that I would say is find a way to tie it into the larger plot. For example, no spoilers that, the people who are watching don't already know. One of the characters is in love with the Raven Queen, and she loves him back.
Wait, like the goddess?
Yeah, the goddess. The thing is, she's dead.
She's also a goddess.
Yes.
Is that a challenge?
Can happen.
She was destroyed basically pre-game. That's kind of part of the backstory that's happened. Is that a big bad done killed her. So a lot of this character's journey is fight the big bad to restore her, that sort of thing, so we can be together again. There's one of the big. I tend to arrange my games in books, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. So like book 3 of the game that I just did was in the Underdark, and a big plot was get to the Drow capital and break up a wedding that is going to be like a huge, horrible power struggle nonsense, and that's where the gay polycule is happening right now, because of one of the characters, his ex-boyfriend was the one who was getting married to his sister. It was awful, but it all came together and they rescued him. So I say find as many ways as possible to weave it into the plot as you can. If you cannot, it's a reward for doing a mission well, is you get another little scene, furthering that kind of relationship. I will also put it into my planning to where like I'm gonna dedicate at least half of the session time to personal character growth stuff, and a lot of it has to do with like relationship building sometimes. So I will always include like one scene per maybe couple of sessions that's like, here is big relevant relationship thing, everything else can be assumed to be happening off screen, that sort of thing.
Cool. So this is going to be our last question, and I want to leave on something fluffy and wonderful. So my last question is for everyone. If you're comfortable, will you tell us a nice story about a favorite time that you had a romance in a game?
I have
You're
very
all
dark
gonna.
stories.
Oh, if dark is what you want,
No,
that's
you
fine.
said you want fluffy, so because my
No.
Justin
I was
Loving
trying
is
to
very
like
dark.
palate cleanse for you all, but you can do whatever you want. Whatever is a palate cleanser for you.
Spoiler.
While you're all thinking, I will say that my most recent good sort of like very interesting slow burn, all the right tropes for me in-game TTRPG romance happened after we had been playing together for about a year and a half, and we both kind of like had it in our heads that probably our characters had crushes on each other and just didn't feel comfy enough like having that conversation. But we like it came up a number of times, like there was like weird jealousy and stuff, but like we just always kind of like danced around it and never really talked to the other person, because in our heads it was just like, nah, they'd never want to have an in-game romance with my character. Finally, 2 games before the end, the player of this character messages me and is like, how do you think they end up? And I'm just like, I mean, would it be weird if they ended up together? And then like they just went, yeah, and we just like started like spamming each other with theories and ways to like end up together at the end game.
Is this
And
hiding
so,
in Way? Is that what happened in your Star Wars game? Yeah,
It
I
is.
saw it.
Yeah, so they ended up together at the epilogue. It was great.
I have a really nice. This is a very cute story. So at the first New World Magiscola that I was at, I was playing like a senior in college. You know, it's a wizard university lot, right? So I was playing a senior who's very. My character was given to me. I did not ask for this character, and the writer did not know me, right? But they gave me a very promiscuous character who like flirts a lot and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, awesome, that's gonna be easy. And there was another person. I'm just gonna call him E. And his character, his human person, I'm like, wow, he's really cute. And so in game, I'm like, okay, will it be okay if my character, as this like promiscuous third year, thinks the character really cute, right? So you know, we were doing the flirty thing. At one point, we had this like detention together where he was like showing me his family wand. It was actually his wand, but anyway. And we were talking. You know, with evenings we started talking out of game, and he has an interesting life. He's like a therapist. He has really interesting stuff. And at one point, I'm like, by the way, I actually think you're really cute. Just want to put it out there. And he's like, that's really nice. And he was straight, right? He's like, oh, thank you for telling me, blah, blah, blah. And we became friends. The final night of Magiscola is always a ball. And so I'm like, you know, I'm going to ask you to ball. He's like, yeah, sure, totally. So we went together, our characters went together, and we were dancing. And it was really funny because at one point I'm like, E, out of character, I'm like, E, have you danced with a dude before? He's like, no, I've never slowed down to do it. I'm like, have you probably then have not danced the dude who thinks you're hot, right? He's like, no. I'm like, okay, you're gonna be able to feel very soon that I'm very into you. And he's like, oh, that's a new experience. And I'm like, I just want to tell you. And then in the after party, we're all hanging out. The after party, he comes up and he's like, Shara. I'm like, what? He's like, do you want to like end our story? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you want to make out? And he's straight, right? I'm like, sure. And so we like made out, and like people around us were like cheering. They're like, woo! And it was like really fun, positive, like fun way. And like I'm still friends with E, and he is still straight, and he has come over and stayed with me. He lives in another state many times, and we're still friends. And it started out with this like character romance that we did that ended in this like really sweet like kiss that was like fun. So.
Speaking of fantasy romance tropes, ball scenes, ballroom scenes. I
who
have a
has
good one
their-
with a show that I was in where my character was a sex worker. She was a courtesan, and our paladin was very tropey paladin, very Puritan, very I never even think of sex because sex is a tool from the devil. And she was not necessarily into him, but very flirty with him because he was such a very prudish kind of character, and he knew, and he was very uncomfortable. The player was totally fine with it. The character was very uncomfortable, and we played, I don't know, 12 sessions or something. It was a short set run show, and I had kind of given up on like the idea of him actually going for it, like the player. We'd never really talked about it out of character. It was all in game. But they bonded over like his daddy issues and like, just very, she was kind of a bitch and like she's actually got a soft side, very yandere or whatever. And at the end it was a big ballroom scene, and there was a gallant okay, well goodbye, and she turns to leave and he pulls her back and kisses her, and it was just and they fucked all night, so
Okay, that needs to be a gif. And they fucked all night.
He was worshiping a different goddess that night.
You took something so wholesome
and made it really positive about human experience.
That's true.
Very
That's
important.
true. That's true. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna put my own stresses out there, but it's fantastic.
You fucked all night.
All right, Nuance or Michael, who's up?
So my ultimate romance is from my forum RPG, and that would take way too long because it also involves like a year of being a zombie. You know how it is. You just
tell us that later in the Discord. That sounds interesting.
But I actually had a really good one. I was an NPC for this game called Threshold, which was a post-futuristic game. And at one point, like, I had a free slot where I didn't have anything scheduled, and they had these things where you could just go and you would be an ad because, everybody's got cortexes, so you're basically a pop-up in people's brains. And I was like, okay, I don't have anything for this. I'll just go out like as a really vampy pop-up and try to sell something incredibly boring like mutual funds because the world. Somebody else was like, oh, I'm actually supposed to go out and try to sell this fried chicken sandwich thing. Why don't you take this? And I'm like, okay. So I start reading it, and it's this with exclamation points, and I'm like, if I just if I can use the same exact words but just change the delivery and this whole thing still fits. So I went out as the chicken VI, where I tried to convince people to buy chicken, and it was I'd start like starting in 3, 2, 1, hey, and it would go just from there, and it's this long thing, and I can still do it. It's great, but everybody's like, there were 2 responses: the I need an adult or I need all of the chicken. And so she ended up coming back several times and struck up this relationship with one of the PCs, because she was just a VI. She had like one job, and that was to sell chicken. But as they talked, like there ended up being like a speed dating thing. So I'm like, so they had added to be able to have these conversations, they've added to my programming, and she started wanting to be in AI. She wanted to be uplifted. She started understanding that there was more than just this chicken. And through this relationship with the character and several other players, like they had to shadow run to get like she's like, yes, my commercial run is ending. They've got a whole new thing. So they had to like shadow run her programming, and they basically ended up turning this one-shot accidental character into an AI, a fully functional AI.
A real boy?
I Pinocchio'd, and it was amazing, and it was just completely random, off the cuff, and it was so good. And like the player got a lot of character growth. Like they had this whole thing where you can't sleep with AIs; it's immoral. VIs are the only one because like it's not the same thing as a person, and so their role, their mindset ended up changing as our relationship deepened. And it was honestly so great. It started off as just being like a one-off, and turned into like, yes, and after this world finishes ending, I will be one of the people here, and I will continue to work to make the others safe, because I do not have to worry of the dangers that you do, or I'm just an AI. And it was just so touching.
Speaking
Also,
of our
we
Mass
read
Effect fangirling, Edie, definitely, that's my girl. That's my girl.
Can we just have like a supplemental episode where we talk about Mass Effect?
I'm down. Let's do it. We'll just talk about our Mass Effect
Or
romances.
dating simulator set in space, which is how
yes.
many people treat that game.
That's exactly
I
what
mean,
it
but
is.
don't
I mean, is
judge
it
me.
anything else?
I do just want to say that if I moved my webcam, I'd show you that I've got the Paragade Renegon stickers on my computer monitor. Just, you know, go through life, making
That's
decisions.
amazing. And I don't want to be this person, but you definitely said Paragade Renegon, and I love it.
Did I? Oh my
How
tired.
else do
You
you
did.
play?
I wasn't
so
gonna
tired.
comment, but I think Michael knows you better, so they can.
No,
comment.
thank you. I'm not gonna edit it. Whatever, it happened.
That's like a cool like.
Paragade?
That's a cool fantasy name though. Like, hi, I'm Paragade Renegon.
All right, Michael, did you have a story?
I do have a story. It's a very long one. I have a couple stories, but I don't want to tell all of them. Shit. I gotta talk about Silas. He's the reason that I'm here. Silas was a good little Scandinavian boy from Sweden. He lived near the original loop, and he moved to New York or Chicago. Where the goddamn game took place. Chicago, and was investigating and stuff like that. And then he met Ritter, who was a rocker boy from California, who was all flustered when they met, and they were both very gay and very repressed and had no fucking idea what was going on. It was really, really cute. It was just like a mutual kind of pining thing where nobody knew what the hell they were doing, until Silas had a nightmare, because he had run away from home and he was staying with Ritter because he was the one who took him in. Silas had a nightmare, woke up in the middle of the night sobbing, and Ritter comforted him, and was just like, it's okay, you know, I can, you don't need all, you know, your house and stuff. I can get you, you know, clothes. And he's like, I don't want all that. And he goes, what do you want? And it was like 30 seconds of silence, and I just went, you. And then they kissed, and it was so fucking cute.
I screamed.
It was so good. That is still I have yet to approach something that tops. I've approached a couple people.
I top a lot, so you've approached
there
me.
we go. We both made the joke, but it was amazing. And that is my story, and it's fluffy, and it's going to be the fluffiest thing that I will remember forever.
Thank you all for that. That was amazing. Let's just do a pretty like abridged go back around saying who you are. So we'll just go reverse order. Nuance, talk about your stuff.
You can find me at Shadowraven on Twitter if you want to hear me talk about intersectional feminism, disability, race stuff, LARPing. It's my catch-all. I also have new Flails About, that's NU, short for Nuance, Flails About, where I flail about media. You can find me on Booksome Wench on Twitter. Every other Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is my Pokemon homebrew. And check out Fast Times at D&D High. That's D, the letter N-D. We're on Twitter, we're on Patreon, we're on everywhere. Listen to our stuff, we're really good. Brad and I are just, and the rest of our cast, and especially Persephone, our GM, are amazing. Check us out.
Adelaide.
I'm Adelaide Gardner. I'm at Adelaide on Twitter. You can find my company at actionfiction.com. I make tabletop role-playing games and a lot of stuff. And I'm Tabletop's Big Titty Devil Queen. So, I post lewd sometimes. That's it.
Michael.
Fuck, I forgot the order. Damn it. Hi, my name is Michael. You can find me at Michael L. Bradley on Twitter. It's not as fun. I don't have a handle. It's just my name. Come check me out on twitch.tv/JackalAndHare, where twice a week we play fun games. Every Monday we play On Gilded Tides, our 5e pirate epic. We are knee-deep in book 4 of 5. It is getting ridiculous, and then after this, I don't give a shit what anybody's saying. I'm running Curse of Strahd, and it's going to be amazing. And then check us out alternating Fridays for our Scion game, The Immortal Odyssey, where I get to play a fiery Irish lass who is the reincarnation of Cerberus. And she is a Scion of Hades, of course. And then check me out on other Fridays where we are playing our Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition game, Vampire at the Disco, where I play Jackson Preen, the peacock of glam rock. who is an absolute prick, and I love him so much.
Sharang.
And I'm Sharang Biswas, and my name is fun, so it is my handle on Twitter as well. And I do a lot of things in the games world. Two main projects that are in the chat right now. The first one is my game Several Miles from Heaven, which is a game about horny teenage demigods, and you play the game by literally taking your clothes off in front of another person. It is part of a bundle with some other really awesome queer designers, and part of our sales are going towards trans healthcare, because as most of you probably know, trans healthcare took a big legislative hit in the United States recently. And the other thing is Honey and Hot Wax, an anthology of erotic art games. I'm the co-curator with Lucian Khan for that anthology. I'm also one of the designers in it. We've been working on it for 2 years. We got 2 grants, like actual grants, to make it happen. It's a collection of games by a very diverse, very queer group of writers and game designers about sex. And if you buy that, all of us are getting royalties, and part of our money from there is going towards sex positive charities. So do check that out if you want to support indie designers and cool charities. And also, it's just an ego boost if people tell me they liked it, because I've been working on it for 2 years. So please tell me you like it, and I'll be happy, and I will smile and say something silly.
Awesome. It was so nice having all of you. This show is definitely a little bit like, can I get cool people to come talk to me? So thank you. And remember, you are never too old for make-believe.
That's a good sign-off.
That is a good sign off.
That's what I do. Bye, everyone.